Today, we're going to talk to Vince Salyards, Director of Category Management for Strategic Accounts at Mars Wrigley. Vince and I first met about 10 years ago and working on some retail innovation with him. And he's really responsible for now, next, and future. And things we've partnered on have been, front of store strategies, self-checkout, just walkout technology, store of the future. How do you create an experience around buy online, pick up in store, or pick up at store to your car? So he's led a lot of that thought leadership, and we're going to talk about the sell-in process with him. He's an expert. He's probably the best person or one of the best people I've worked with in that capacity, and excited to hear what he has to say today.
Appreciate you talking to me today, and appreciate the compliment too. I don't know if I'm the best, but I know I'm probably one of the people that have been doing it the longest. So I've been in the CPG industry for 37 years now, primarily all in food, beverage, and snacks businesses. I kicked off my career 10 years with Nabisco, which was then Nabisco, cookies and crackers business. Then moved over to PepsiCo for 15 years and worked in all their divisions across all their businesses. And now I'm with Mars Wrigley, the world's largest confectionery company. And my experience is all in sales and category management leadership. And worked with a lot of customers across nearly every channel in retail. And I've had the privilege of working with folks like you and organizations like you, Raj, to help elevate our game with partnerships with our retailers. Currently, I'm with Mars Wrigley, like I said, and I lead a category management team. Currently, the team I'm leading is focused on what we call the value channel, which is the fastest growing channel for us, retail channel for us. It includes retailers, national retailers like Dollar General, Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, Five Below. There's a large number of Aldi, a large number of discount grocers and dollar stores, which have just shown significant growth, and which has been great because they're very proactive in projects like this. So it's been a long 37-year career across a lot of different customers. So that's my background.
Well, thanks, Vince. It's awesome to have you and talk to you about all this experience, and go deeper into some conversations we've had before.
Mhm.
So, I think what we've seen from you, a lot of the work you do is you are selling in thought leadership. You've used that phrase, thought leadership, and those words pretty often when you talk to us and you talk about your aspiration. What does it mean to you as a representative of a large CPG company going into some of the largest retailers in the world to be a thought leader?
Well, that's a good question, Raj. And thought leadership is kind of this broad term that I'm not sure is probably an overused term, and probably a lot of people don't know what it means. I'm not sure I do exactly, but I can definitely give you my perspective on it. Um, when I work with my team and I bring people onto my team and they ask what are the types of things we should be doing in support of our retail partners, I tell them we should be delivering against what I call the three I's. And those three I's are information, insight, and intrigue. And information and insight are the first two elements are ones that nearly every category management organization and manufacturer can bring to the table. It's the analytics, which is the information. The insight is how you take that information and develop a so what out of it. The intrigue is the tough one that really separates you from everyone else in my mind and can separate a best in class team like the team that I have, right? That I feel I have. And that's delivering this intrigue. And intrigue is, to me, aligns really well with thought leadership. And what I mean by intrigue is tell your retailer something they don't know, right? And I call it the aha factor, right? The worst meetings you can have is when you're going through PowerPoint slides and you're talking to a retailer and they're saying, yeah, I get it, I've seen it. Those are terrible meetings. What you want to do is deliver this thought leadership where they say, I never thought of it that way, or I never looked at it in that lens before. That to me is thought leadership, where it really separates yourself and makes you best in class.
So when you think about the three I's and be curious, like what's your approach? I mean, what's your process and approach for going through this whole process and delivering those?
Well, selling in big strategic projects and innovative merchandising solutions and strategies is not easy. It's really, really complex. And over the years, I've kind of figured out a bit of an approach that's worked for me. And it really falls into kind of delivering against four key elements. First and foremost, you've got to have quality work, right? And that's the fundamental piece, is that you bring high quality work to any meeting you're having with a retailer. And that's where these three I's come in for sure, especially the intrigue piece. But high quality work doesn't mean delivering a PowerPoint presentation in my mind. What it means is telling a story that evokes some sort of emotion, right? And triggers a hook in the retailer's mind where they want to take action, right? So it's got to be compelling, it's got to be relevant, and it's got to be creative. I think in category management, the function I work in, right, we're so heavily weighted a lot of times towards analytics and the data. That's important. That's a piece of it. And it's just a foundational piece of it, though. That's really exercising the left side of the brain, right? And we're all really good at that in category management. Where we really start to shine, in my mind, is when we bring in more of that creative element. And to me, exercising that right brain side is as important, if not more important, than that analytic left side. And that's not easy, right? So that's where you really evoke emotion, and showcase your ideas in a way that matter in a creative way. And that's where working with agencies like yours, Raj, really help us. That's where we have to reach out, because we're not naturally creative folks, may not be our strength. And we need help from some creative agencies like yourself to really bring things to life that helps us tell that story that evokes emotion, right? So that's the first piece. That pieces into this quality work. If you're not delivering quality work, you're not going to get anywhere with your retailers. Now, and I work for large companies. All my companies, as you heard, were large companies. We get an audience for the most part with most retailers. But if you're delivering quality work, and if you're delivering this intrigue I talk about, you can get an audience no matter how big you are. And I think that's really important to know. It's about the quality of the work. So that's the first piece of it. And second piece, though, and this is really, really important, as you start to really push towards activation in key strategic projects and delivering against solutions, you need to get to the right audience with your retailer. And that's these big strategic projects that I've partnered with you on, Raj, are projects that really can't be delivered necessarily to junior folks at retailers. It's got to be senior level folks, the key decision makers who can really make things happen, right? And it's senior levels, not just external with the retailer, but also internal, because a lot of these things require investment, right? And commitment from your own organization. So you've got to make sure to get to the right people who can make the decisions to get things done, right? And doesn't hurt also to have a size of prize attached to it that's really going to resonate with that audience, those senior level folks, what's important to them. Third piece of it is, once you've got the right audience, to me, it's really, really important that you know that audience. And what I mean by that is you've got to do your homework before you're interacting with these folks, right? Understand what are their retailer strategies, what are their corporate strategies, what are the problems they're trying to solve for. It helps you to understand what are the triggers that are going to get them to make a decision, right? I talked about this creative piece. We can come into and we do this. We come in with these great renderings, great concepts, pictures, right, that look great. But if it's a solution that can't be executed, then you're not going to get anywhere, right? And so you have to know the audience and know what's going to be important to them, what's really going to resonate with them. And most of the time, in the retailers I work with, it's going to be something that's tangible, that can be executed, that's going to benefit their business. And lastly, the last piece I would say, as far as the process that I try to follow and keep in mind, is don't ever give up, right? These are really, really complex challenges and things we're bringing forth to retailers. And I think a lot of times we make the mistakes, and people who work for me make the mistakes in big projects like this, of thinking that they failed if they haven't hit a home run the first time, right? And I'm a big, big baseball fan. And so to me, I parallel this to a batting average for a baseball player, right? When you're a baseball player and you get a hit 3 out of every 10 times, you hit 300, you're an all-star, right? I think that's the benchmark you need to kind of go in with and think of yourself as having when you bring big projects to retailers like this. Hitting 300 is really, really good. And you're not going to hit a home run every time, right? And so you got to just keep going in and not giving up. In fact, a failed meeting can actually end up being a good meeting, because you want to make sure to leave a failed meeting with a next step and understanding why your proposition was not being accepted as well as you would like. Get some feedback, get that retailer involved in the idea generation so they feel a part of it, and leave yourself an opportunity to come back in and adjust whatever concept, whatever rendering, whatever solution you put forth, and they know they have a hand in it as well. And that's going to help you raise that batting average, right? The more you go in and the more practice you get, obviously your batting average is going to go up. But don't be frustrated if you're only successful 3 out of 10 times. Like baseball, that's pretty darn good. Those 4 things: quality work, getting to the right audience, making sure you know that audience, and don't ever give up, I think is really the process that I've tried to follow. It's been successful.
That's great. So, going through that process, then what does a win look like for you, for your team, for the organization, for the customer, however you want to answer that. But when you think about it, you're trying to get a win. What does that look like?
A win is seeing a solution that shows up in a store. If you see your work show up in a store, and you're able to execute something that benefits the retailer, the manufacturer, and probably most importantly, the shopper, that's a win. And don't forget though, and because I work for a big company and your retailers, profitability is important. You've got to have an ROI attached to it, right? If you're not going to get a return on that investment, because a lot of times these solutions take a pretty significant investment, you've got to show an ROI as well. So, but I get the most joy out of taking my kids into a store and I see a solution that we've built together, Raj, in that store. That's success to me.
Yeah, and those are hard to get, like you said, the 300. And I think what we've seen is sometimes you go in with something that's something that's broad and big and futuristic, and you may never really truly think that's going to show up in a store, but you're using that to stretch the customer to think bigger and broader.
Right. You want to push them, right? That's a part of thought leadership. And it's just, I've worked with agencies before where the creative is awesome. It's a great picture, but you can't bring art to a retailer. You've got to there's a difference between art and a real solution. A real solution is something that can be executed. And senior leaders at a retailer recognize it pretty fast if it's a pie in the sky idea that is not going to really see the light of day, right? So, and it's real important in my role to make sure that when we're working with creative agencies like yourself, that we bring them back to reality, right? Push the envelope, but it's still got to be realistic.
When you think about your experience, I'd be curious, like, what would you tell a less experienced sales team in order to improve their success? How does someone get started? What are those key things that they should be doing or thinking about or researching?
Yeah, like I said, these are very complex types of projects, and it can be really overwhelming, right? And even for myself, after 37 years of trying to do things like this, I go back to a framework I built years ago, and this is what I communicate to new folks who are getting into more strategic projects like we're talking about here. And that framework is, I call it dirty, but it's spelled a little bit differently. It's DIRTE, right? And even when I'm struggling and thinking, okay, I got to get back on track. This is an overwhelming project. Let's go back to this framework. It gives you a real solid roadmap or direction and guide as to how to kick off a big project and work your way through the different steps. And dirty, each letter stands for a different piece of that step. So the D, for instance, is discovery, and that is really understanding and talking to these senior level retailers or your retailer and understanding what are the problems they're trying to solve for, right? Understand their strategy, right? So do some homework and discover where they're coming from and what their needs are. So that's the D. And the I in this dirty process is insights. And so then you go and you collect insights and gather insights that are actionable, relevant, and helps you to identify the opportunities that support that strategy you learned about and the problems to solve in the discovery phase, right? So that's the D and the I. And the R then is research, right? And that's where once you've identified the opportunities, quite often, if you can get the investment and research dollars to do it, it really resonates with the retailer if you go and talk to their shopper, right? And uncover, this is where you develop hypotheses that are going to benefit that shopper, that's going to help them solve that problem that we talked about in discovery and insights. So that's the R. And then the T is once you've developed that hypothesis, and what you want to do is develop a solution. T is for test, right? Develop a solution that's going to satisfy that hypothesis and solve that problem they're trying to solve, and quantify the impact through testing, preferably in store. Virtual works as well, but do something that is going to finalize that solution and bring it credibility, because the last letter in this, it's not a Y, it's an E. It's DIRTE is how I'm spelling dirty here. And it's the most important step and probably the most difficult to get to, which is execution, right? But if you're following this dirty process, and I frame it up with my folks, I said, don't be afraid to get dirty with your retailer. That's how you're going to get results, right? But if you're following each of those steps, we've gone through discovery, delivered insights, collected research, tested potential solutions, you can get to that crucial step of execution and see it show up in store. And I think even today, when I get overwhelmed with a big project, I go back to this framework and it helps me understand, here's what I need to do. Here's the steps I need to take. It's a good roadmap to get towards execution of a big strategic project and delivering strong merchandising solutions for retailers.
That's great. Dirty framework. We
Dirty.
like framework. So yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you've learned a lot. You lead teams and you've, had a lot of success and probably also a lot of, challenges. What have you learned over the years that can make or break success? What are some of those learnings? What are some of the roadblocks? But love to hear, some of that experience from you.
Yeah, there's challenges for sure, and there's roadblocks. That's why, I'm happy to hit 300 in projects like this, right? But some of the things that you need to overcome, I think, that really help to improve your chance of success, is you've got to get, a lot of times these projects, especially when you're developing new, innovative, visionary merchandising ideas and solutions, you can't just talk to one stakeholder at a retailer, because quite often these things involve a lot of different stakeholders and cross functions at retailers, right? That can really be one of the biggest downfalls, is that in order to get things executed, which is what we're all trying to get to for success, to get those things executed involves involvement from a lot of stakeholders, not just that merchant you're talking to, but it also involves alignment with operations, right? Or marketing, or even your internal folks, where you're going to need investment against these things. So, you're almost like a UN ambassador, because you're working with all kinds of different countries. And if you can't get them all aligned, you're not going to see success and get a win out of this. So that's probably the biggest thing, is to make sure not to work in silos and work across different functions. Make sure all the stakeholders who have a hand are convinced this is going to work. And convinced is important, because you've got to have 100% confidence from these senior leaders and whoever you're working with, that what you've brought to the table has a high likelihood of succeeding. And it's important, because there's a lot of risk involved in these things, right? Quite often it's a high investment, right? A senior leader or whoever is aligning with you is going to have to stick his neck out and go to bat within his organization to get these things done. They've got to have you've got to convince them to have a real strong possibility mindset, because there's no guarantees. And they have to take a leap of faith, right? Especially if they're investing against it and they're taking money and they're sticking their neck out for it. So you've got to make sure that you've delivered a high level of confidence that what you're bringing is realistic, is going to help them drive their sales and drive their shopper engagement. It's going to make them look like a star as well. So I think, that whole complexity around all these stakeholders and how difficult it is to get this from start to finish is probably some of the biggest roadblocks.
Thanks, Vince. I mean, I could talk to you, probably all day about this. It's a topic near and dear to my heart, and I've learned a lot from you. We've experienced a lot together. You've been an invaluable partner to Pine and to me personally, and a really great friend. And it's been neat to see how our relationships evolved since that day we met in Chicago probably 10 years ago. So thank you so much for sharing this insight. We may get a request to do a follow up, and probably going to be a lot of excitement listening to this and learning from all your experience. So thanks a lot.
I feel the same way, Raj. Thanks for your partnership. And, gosh, it's only been 10 years. Gosh, I thought it was a lot longer than that. Yeah, you've been a big help to me and the organizations I worked for. And what you guys bring to the table with that creative right side of the brain really helps in what we do. So thanks for the opportunity. Hopefully, whoever views this gets something out of some of this 37 years of knowledge. But
I'm sure they will.
thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Vince.